Hey folks, it's Norm Bergen taking you on an insider's tour of Jasper National Park. Did you know that the very first national park to license female trail guides was right here in Jasper? Today, folks, I'd like to introduce you to the two sisters that changed the face of trail guiding in the Canadian national parks. They are Mona and Agnes Harrigan. The sisters were born in Trinidad in 1904 and 1906. 2 years later, in 1908, the family relocated to Salmon Arm, British Columbia, where they lived on a small farm. With limited financial resources, the family couldn't afford to buy a horse. So their father got them a cow, which Agnes trained and rode. With their tremendous love of horses and the beautiful outdoors, a family friend suggested that they write to apply for jobs as guides in the national parks. Well, Agnes wrote to the outfitters applying for those particular positions. However, Banff and Jasper had the same responses. The answer was simply, no, we do not hire women as trail guides. In 1927, Fred Brewster built this Moline Lake chalet that's right here behind me. He wrote back to the girls and he invited them to come on up here to look after one of his tent camps and to be the cooks there as well. In June of 1927, the sisters readily accepted, and it was right here where they arrived and spent the next 2 weeks in preparing this lodge for the guests that were coming. In July, the sisters moved north. They came here to Medicine Lake. There was a camp on the southeast corner here of the lake. There is nothing left there to indicate a camp had existed. However, this is where they came to run and operate the camp. Used as a lunch stop for tourists traveling to Moline Lake, it consisted of 3 wooden frame sleeping tents for occasional overnight stays and a cook tent with a dining area. Cooking and taking care of the camp was not enough for these 2 young ladies. Oh no, they wanted to learn everything there was to learn about trail rides. They even volunteered to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, who does that, just so they could go out there, find those horses in the dark, bring them back so they could prepare and help to get the people ready for the trail ride coming up. By the end of the season, those 2 young ladies knew everything there was to know about Medicine Lake. They knew the animals. They even knew where the fish were. It didn't matter. They knew it all. They were the local experts. I wonder, though, if those bald eagles were here way back then. In 1928, Fred Brewster wrote a letter to the Harrigan sisters, inviting them to come back to Jasper, giving them the choice of being in charge of any one of his camps. They wrote back to Mr. Brewster, and they told him unless they were going to be trail guides, they were not returning to Jasper. Well, this caused quite a disturbance here in this community, but Fred Brewster finally accepted them and hired them as the very first 2 female trail guides in a national park anywhere in Canada. You see, the rumor is that really wasn't Fred's decision, but rather he had the influence of his good wife, who simply said, "Fred, you hire them." And he did. Apparently, there was a little bit of confrontation with park authorities when the Harrigan sisters showed up here to receive their official guiding license. You see, guiding was never done by girls. It was a man's job only. After they each paid $1 for their license, they became the very first female guides here in the national park. They received a shiny badge, and it said National Parks of Canada Guide on it, with the year and their registration number. Starting that summer, in the spring of 1928, Agnes and Mona worked the Circle Trail. People would get brought up here by car to the north end of Medicine Lake. They would cross this lake by boat. Folks, just so that you know, this is not a lake, it is a sinking river. It's just like a bathtub. It fills up in the springtime and it empties in the fall. From the south end of Medicine Lake, it was a horseback ride all the way up to Maline Lake Chalet. There they would spend some time. On their return trip, they would go back through Little Shovel Pass, just a little bit west of us here. They would stay the night there, and of course, the next morning, it meant a very long horse ride all the way back to Jasper. Mona and Agnes shared a string of 35 horses. They did not see each other very often, only in passing on the trails or occasionally in camp. They were also promised that they would have packers. Well, the packers never showed up. So Agnes and Mona started and ended their day in the wee hours of the morning, catching, saddling, and doctoring their animals. Well, folks, these girls were so short and tiny in their structure that in order to load these animals, they had to stand on a stump or on another box that they were going to pack up. Most of those trips that those girls did ended here at Jasper Park Lodge. Those young ladies would wear Stetsons. They would have chaps on and fancy neckerchiefs. Most people thought that they had to be daughters of a millionaire in order to get those jobs. The Harrigan sisters spoke often of the joy that they had received from the years that they worked here in this park. Mona said simply, the work was very hard, very difficult, but she had such a personal joy and satisfaction because she was able to do it. Folks, stay safe, be well, and I'll see you in the mountains.